The retreat of the state, the wonderful retreat of the state that began in May 1979 with the election of Margaret Thatcher and accelerated in January 1981 with the inauguration of Ronald Reagan. The retreat of the state has been abruptly reversed to a point at which we are blurring to the point of erasure the distinction between the public and the private sectors. In the process, we are refusing to learn from the past. We are beginning to replicate many of the mistakes of the New Deal. Intelligent men and women of goodwill differ as to why the New Deal failed, but no one doubts that the New Deal failed at its primary objective, which was to put America back to work. Yet we're replicating its techniques. In September 1933, with hunger stalking the land and unemployment over 20%, the New Deal had a brainstorm, and that was to fiddle with demand in the agriculture sector and trigger a revival of the economy. They ordered the slaughter of 6 million pigs. We're smarter. We have cash for clunkers, whereby we spent $3 billion to move car purchases from September into August. All of which proves, as Mitch McConnell never tires of saying, that there is no education in the second kick of a mule. But look how the world has changed. 16 months ago, New York City was still the financial capital of the world. It's not even the financial capital of the United States. This town is. We have now something like state capitalism, in which capital, credit, the lifeblood of our economy, is increasingly treated as a public utility to be priced and allocated by political forces. Inevitably, this makes capital a slush fund, and inevitably, it funds crony capitalism. Much of this, we must face, ladies and gentlemen, began under a Republican administration. For example, with Detroit, where we pioneered, it was a Republican administration that began it, the lemon socialism of subsidizing failure. I don't know why the Bush administration felt so strongly about this. I think they were haunted by the searing memories of the continent-wide urban unrest and civil disorders that accompanied the bankruptcy of Studebaker. Today we have an administration that can envision a world without the internal combustion engine, but not a world without the Chrysler Corporation. What's wrong with this picture? Ronald Reagan said the rule in Washington is if it moves, tax it. If it keeps moving, regulate it. When you finally get it to stop moving, subsidize it to get it moving again. That summarizes pretty much our policy. But what we have done with our passion to make more and more sectors of American society more and more dependent on this town is to short-circuit Milton Friedman's fundamental insight. He said we have a profit and loss system. The profit side is to incentivize risk-taking. The loss side is to punish reckless risk. When you break that, but Detroit is just the largest and most lurid and garish example of the dependency agenda. Let me go down the list. Very soon, the two most important decisions that an American family makes, to get a mortgage and to get a loan for college tuition, will both be conducted with a government monopoly. The cradle-to-grave aspiration of the welfare state marches on. One of the first things done in January 2009 that this administration did was to expand SCHIP, the State Children's Hospital Insurance Program, created by Republicans, as a small program, and Republicans evidently thought it would stay small. It was for the working poor. Now that it has been expanded, families in some states with household incomes up to $125,000 a year are eligible for SCHIP. There is no reason to expand it this much other than to raise a generation of young Americans who consider getting their health care from government normal. Every day, ladies and gentlemen, every day for the next 2 decades, 10,000 more baby boomers will join the ranks of the Social Security and Medicare rolls every day. In this town, we have a school voucher program that serves 1,300 mostly poor, almost entirely minority students, enabling them to choose what a great many of the lawmakers in this town choose to do, which is send their children to private schools. The Democratic Party in Congress has worked tirelessly to extinguish this because they want these students to be dependent on the ramshackle plantation of public education in the city of Washington. There was no other reason to have a public option in the health care bill other than to try and drive out of competition all private providers. It was clearly a first step toward a single-payer system. Turn on your television at night. You are going to see competition all over your television screen between Progressive automobile insurance, arguing with Geico automobile insurance, arguing with State Farm automobile insurance. There is no reason in the world why we're not allowed to buy health insurance across state lines other than to increase our dependencies. That is, I might say, so obvious that even a caveman can understand it. Dependency explains the implacable hostility of the current administration to health savings accounts, wherein you buy high-deductible health insurance, you become eligible for tax-preferred savings out of which you pay your regular expenses. The trouble is that emancipates people because they take their own money and buy what they want. It has been well said, no one washes a rental car. You take care of what you own. And a health savings account is a way of doing that. It is part of the dependency agenda to stigmatize and delegitimize large portions of the private sector, such as the pharmaceutical industry for its supposedly obscene profits. If you confiscated all the profits of the American pharmaceutical industry, you would lower the pharmaceutical component of our health care bill from 10% all the way down to 8%. And in the process, you would, of course, kill the industry's capacity for innovation, which it funds out of profits. Insurance companies are now in for their turn on the cross. If you confiscated all the profits of the health insurance industry in our country, you could pay with those profits 2 days of American health care. Part of the dependency agenda is to encourage an entitlement mentality. To encourage, for example, the entitlement mentality off which the trial bar, the largest single contributor to the Democratic Party, prospers. It is the entitlement that we are told we have, that if anything bad happens to us, even if it's a result of our own imbecilic behavior, we are entitled to sue someone to be made whole. That is why America, as a sign of our displaced sense of personal responsibility, America has all these weird labels on things that we buy. You know, if you go to McDonald's and buy a cup of hot coffee, it comes in a styrofoam cup with hot stamped on it in Farsi, Mandarin Chinese, French, German. It's because that woman bought a cup of hot coffee, clamped it between her legs, drove down the street, spilled it, burned herself, sued McDonald's, and collected. That is why in the land of the free and the home of the brave, you can buy a 5-inch fishing lure that comes with a warning label that says harmful if swallowed. You can buy a letter opener that says safety goggles recommended. You can buy a clothes iron that says do not iron clothes on body. You can buy a child stroller that says remove child before folding. I tend to subscribe to the Garth Brooks theory of personal responsibility expressed in his song, Long Neck Bottle, Let Go of My Hand.